I thought everything had ended that night until a mouth started growing on my shoulder. My name is Nathan. I'm 31 years old and I love solo backpacking, especially mountain climbing. This time, I chose to climb a mountain in the north, a place rarely visited by people. The morning was sunny and mild, but by late afternoon, dark clouds suddenly rolled in. It immediately started pouring, like a sudden deluge. The GPS I brought was ruined by the water. Its screen had gone completely black. I kept trying to move forward, thinking I just needed to get over one more hill to reach the main road. It started getting dark, but I still hadn't found my way out. Suddenly, I saw a lone wooden house in the forest. I ran toward the house and gently knocked on its rotting wooden door. A moment later, a thin old woman, about 70 years old, with a brown scarf on her head, opened the door. I immediately explained my mountain climbing trip and getting lost, asking if I could stay the night. The old woman nodded, stepping aside to let me enter the house. That night, the old woman let me sleep on the armchair near the fireplace because there were no other rooms in the house. Suddenly, I heard voices echoing from the old woman's room. Curious, I quietly got up and tiptoed toward her bedroom. The door was ajar. I leaned my head and peered through the crack, almost screaming in terror. In the dimly lit room, the old woman was sitting in front of a large mirror. Right behind the old woman's head, a second mouth was opening. What was more terrifying was that the mouth was talking to the old woman in a strange language. I frantically backed away, my heart pounding in my chest, but my foot accidentally stepped on a loose floorboard, which let out a dry creak in the quiet of the night. The old woman instantly stood up like a puppet on strings, her eyes wide and bloodshot. I turned and ran, but after only 2 steps, the old woman's hand grabbed my neck from behind. Before darkness swallowed me, the last thing I felt was cold teeth sinking deep into my left shoulder. The next morning, I woke up abruptly in the desolate forest. The old woman and the wooden house had vanished without a trace, as if it had all just been a nightmare. However, the throbbing bite mark on my left shoulder was clear evidence of what had happened last night. Afterwards, some hikers found me and took me to the hospital. One night, I woke up with a start because of a wiggling sensation on my shoulder. I frantically looked in the mirror and discovered a mouth had grown on my left shoulder, and it began to utter terrifying whispers.
Perhaps the most terrible thing in love is not being abandoned, but when he wants to keep you forever. I'm Bella, graphic designer, live alone, few friends, lots of deadlines, bored with relationships. Until I met Jay. Jay was my online friend. He was sweet, funny, and patient. We talked every night, but when he started asking strange questions, I started to feel scared. I immediately blocked him, deleted social media, turned off location. But I couldn't escape the feeling of being followed. That night, I took a shower to clear my mind. When I looked up, the words on the mirror, "You're in," had been written for a long time, making me extremely scared. But when I looked again, the words had disappeared. Before I could scream, a gloved hand covered my mouth with a cloth soaked in anesthetic. I passed out. When I woke up, I found myself tied to a chair. A strange, strong smell rushed into my nose, making me want to vomit. I was shocked when I saw Jay. He was the one who kidnapped me. He held a bottle of opaque liquid and said that he would keep my skin for decades. He held a bottle of opaque liquid and said that he would keep my skin for decades. My eyes fell on 3 glass cases containing mummified girls in the corner of the room. Surely I would be the next work if I didn't escape from here. I was almost desperate. But the ropes weren't tight. I tried to move my wrists. I held my breath and tried to loosen the ropes. When he turned his back, I took the opportunity to attack. I didn't dare look back. I ran. Just wanted to escape from the nightmare. The door swung open. I was stunned. The house was right on the main road. What a confident pervert. I burst into tears, screaming for help. Someone came running. The police arrived. They broke down the basement door. But Jay was gone. In the middle of the room was a transparent glass chamber. Inside was a 3D model of me. I left the city, lived anonymously, cut off all contact. But from that day on, every time the doorbell rang, my heart stopped beating.
I have a friend named Emma who is 25 years old. She once had a beautiful love story with a man named William, who was 3 years older than her. At first, William loved and spoiled her, making her believe she had found the perfect partner. But soon, his love became suffocating and turned into a nightmare. William controlled Emma too much. He didn't let her meet her friends, not even her closest girlfriends. When she couldn't take it anymore, she decided to break up. But William didn't let her go easily. At first, he begged her desperately, but then he started threatening her. One day, he kidnapped Emma. She woke up in a strange room, her hands and feet tied tightly. William spoke softly.
Hello, my love.
William's voice was gentle, but it sent chills down Emma's spine. She tried to move, but the ropes were too tight and hurt her wrists. Emma shouted angrily.
Let me go, William!
William tilted his head and smiled.
You are mine. I won't let you leave me.
He walked closer and touched her face. Emma tried to turn away, but she couldn't do anything. William wanted Emma to love him again and obey him. He clenched his teeth and said,
Emma, say you love me. Say it!
Emma struggled, but the more she resisted, the tighter he held her. She yelled,
I hate you! I regret ever loving you!
Hearing this, William's eyes filled with rage. He immediately slapped Emma hard. Emma felt a burning pain on one side of her face, and the sharp sting made her dizzy. William shouted angrily,
I did everything for you. And you? You want to leave me? You betrayed me.
Emma screamed back.
William, you are crazy! You disgust me!
William became more furious. He punched and slapped her repeatedly until her lips bled. The days after that were a never-ending nightmare. Whenever she resisted, he beat her, starved her, and left her weak and trembling. But after hurting her, he would hold her close, kiss her forehead, and comfort her like a child. Emma soon realized that the more she fought back, the more violent he became. She spoke softly.
William, I'm sorry for hurting you.
She knew she had to act the way he wanted, at least until she found a way to escape. Without waiting for his reaction, she smiled gently and said,
These days, I realize that I still love you.
William seemed surprised by her reaction. His eyes widened in shock. Even though she wanted to push him away, Emma held back. She had to think fast and find a way to escape this horrible place. William smiled happily.
Good girl. I knew you still loved me.
Emma then said softly,
William, I want to hug you, but my hands are tied.
Without hesitation, William untied her ropes. Emma watched as he loosened each knot, feeling relieved inside. She gave him a weak smile and whispered,
Thank you, William. I love you.
William smiled with satisfaction, stroking her head like a pet. Emma then saw a bottle of wine on the table. Slowly, she walked over and poured some into a glass. She handed it to William and smiled.
William, I am really happy to be with you.
William was completely off guard. He took the glass of wine from Emma's hand and brought it to his lips to drink. Seizing the moment, Emma grabbed the wine bottle and smashed it over his head. Emma ran to the door, but it was locked. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't open it. She looked around the room, searching for anything to help her escape. Then she saw a rusty iron rod in the corner. Without hesitation, she grabbed it and used all her strength to hit the door. After several strikes, the door finally broke open. Emma ran outside without looking back. Later, she called the police, but when they arrived, William was gone. There were no signs of torture or blood in the apartment. In fact, the apartment was Emma's home, but she truly believed she had been kidnapped. The police thought she had mental health issues and sent her to the hospital for treatment. A few days later, they found a man's body in an abandoned house outside the city. His body had multiple stab wounds from a broken wine bottle found at the scene. After investigating, the police confirmed that the victim was William. They also found Emma's fingerprints at the crime scene. However, when they questioned her, she had no memory of killing William. After suffering such a huge trauma, Emma could no longer tell what was real and what was just a nightmare in her mind. Now she is in the hospital, receiving treatment for PTSD and paranoid disorder.
Living with strangers carries a lot of risks. I almost lost my life just because I decided to live with a stranger. I am Neo, 23 years old, and I had just moved into a small apartment near my workplace. Because I wanted to save costs, I posted an ad on Facebook looking for a roommate. Not long after, a guy named Justin contacted me. He seemed cold and quiet, but I thought that would help avoid trouble, so I agreed to let him stay. Although we lived in the same apartment, Justin and I rarely ran into each other. During the day, he always stayed in his room with the door closed, only going out in the evening and usually returning very late at night. One night, I was thirsty, so I went to the living room to get a drink. I saw Justin coming back, holding a black plastic bag, and there was a long scratch on his face that was still bleeding. I asked Justin with a surprised tone.
Why are you back so late? What's wrong with your face?
Justin looked at me coldly and said,
It's okay. I had something I needed to do.
Justin gave me a curt reply and quietly walked into the room. I found him a bit puzzling, but I didn't pay much attention. The next evening, Justin hurriedly left, but his door was still ajar. I stood up to help him close the door, but suddenly smelled a stench like blood. I curiously pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was pitch dark. Groping for the switch next to the door, I turned on the light, and the room was instantly filled with brightness. A horrifying scene lay before me. On the table lay a dagger and a rough rope stained with dried blood. My heart suddenly pounded, and a cold shiver ran down my spine. On the wall, a whiteboard was covered with images of women, each marked with red pen strokes. My gaze unconsciously drifted down to the bottom of the trash can, and out of curiosity, I pulled it out, only to be horrified to to discover a pair of pupils seemingly glaring at me. I felt a chill run down my spine, but before I could react, footsteps echoed outside the door. Justin coldly looked at me and said,
What are you doing here?
I pushed Justin's hand away, nervously stepping back.
These are the people who have been reported missing on the news these past few days. You killed them!
They all deserve to die.
I nervously stepped back and looked at Justin, saying,
You're a murderer. I'm calling the police.
Justin smirked coldly.
Then let's see if you can get out of here.
He suddenly delivered a strong kick to my stomach. My whole body was thrown back, staggering before I felt hard. My back, hitting the edge of the table, accidentally brushed against the knife on the table, and I hurriedly grabbed it and lunged towards Justin. But he quickly seized my wrist and tightened his grip. I gritted my teeth and put all my strength into kicking Justin's shin. He groaned, bending down in pain, and I immediately turned around to run. Justin quickly regained his balance and lunged forward, kicking me hard in the back. I lost control, staggered, and fell heavily onto the floor. As soon as I turned around to get up, he rushed at me, pinning me down and throwing a series of punches at my face. I shouted angrily.
Murderer, let me go now!
Justin angrily replied,
What do you know? They deserve to die. Traitors, liars. Just like my mother. She deceived my father, betrayed our family and Kia, and caused his death.
His every word felt like a sharp, cold blade slicing through the air. I stood frozen, my heart pounding. I tried to stay calm and replied,
Do you think doing this will be good for you? Or will it only make that obsession haunt you forever?
Justin froze, his grip on my collar unconsciously loosening. A flicker of hesitation flashed in his eyes. I seized the opportunity, mustering all my strength to break free. I shoved him aside, desperately trying to escape his grasp, but Justin quickly caught on to my intention. He reached out and grabbed my ankle, sending a sharp pain shooting through my calf. Horrified, I realized that the blade in his hand had pierced deep into my flesh. A searing pain spread through my body, forcing me to collapse. Justin glared at me and said through gritted teeth,
I didn't want to kill you, but you already know too much.
He tightened his grip on the knife, slowly stepping toward me. My heart clenched, and my breath grew unsteady. I looked at him in fear and pleaded,
Justin, stop before it's too late!
Justin looked at me with disappointment and said,
I can't turn back anymore.
Just as the blade was mere inches from me, the door suddenly burst open. Police stormed in, their guns aimed directly at Justin. A police officer aimed his gun and shouted,
Drop the weapon! Hands up now!
The police rushed in, handcuffing Justin before dragging him out of the apartment. His face was pale, and his empty eyes glanced over me one last time. My breath was still unsteady, my heart pounding wildly in my chest. Just a few seconds later, and I might not have existed in this world anymore. Everything had finally come to an end, but my heart still felt heavy. It was like a nightmare I couldn't escape from.
Every time I turn off the lights to go to sleep, the strange noise starts, right in my ceiling. I'm Olivia. I just moved into this quiet house, a place that suits an introvert like me. Everything seems normal, but inside I still feel uneasy, like someone is waiting. The bedroom is small, simple but cozy, where I hope to find peace. But the first night, I heard a strange noise. I thought it was just an old house, so there would be noises like that every now and then. But then every night there was a noise. One night, the footsteps stopped right above my head. I started sleeping with the light on. It felt like someone was watching. I set my phone to record all night. In the morning, I saw a blank frame covered. Sometimes I saw my reflection in the mirror, a beat slower. I tried knocking on the ceiling, but got no echo. I've had enough. Tonight, I must see what lives above me. Each step up the stairs is like stepping into a whisper. The wooden steps groan under my hands. The air smells musty. The attic is dark, dusty, as if long forgotten. In the dark corner, a block stood still, covered in white cloth. I took a deep breath and approached. The light was shaking, as if it was afraid to see the truth.
You're finally here.
The cloth fell. A mirror appeared, but it did not reflect. Inside was my face, but his eyes were empty and lifeless. I tilted my head, and it stood still, just watching me like prey. I stepped back. It smiled a smile that did not belong to a living person. Then it spoke in my own voice. A long, cool voice that echoed from the ground. It whispered intimate memories. Hiding in the closet, drawing on the ceiling in a fever. Things only I knew were no longer secrets, but it moved forward, very slowly.
You're just a copy. I'm the original.
I screamed, but there was no sound. In the mirror, it was wearing the shirt I was going to wear. Its eyes were triumphant. I woke up. The ceiling was low. The door was locked from the outside. From the floor came my voice, living my life.
I still vividly remember that night, gloomy, cold, and haunting. No matter how much I try to forget, it remains etched deep in my mind, like a knife carving into my flesh. I am Selena, 27 years old, currently working as a reporter for a prestigious newspaper. That night I worked later than usual. When I left the office, the digital clock flickered, displaying 11:47 p.m. The streets were sparse, the streetlights flickering as if they were about to go out, leaving thick patches of darkness covering the road. I quickened my pace, feeling a vague sense of unease, though I wasn't sure why. Suddenly I heard voices coming from the alley I had just passed.
Please, don't kill me. I won't tell anyone. Please.
I stopped in my tracks, slowly stepping toward the source of the voice, straining to hear what was happening. In the dim light, I saw a middle-aged man kneeling on the filthy ground, his trembling hands raised in a plea for mercy. Facing him stood a figure in a dark coat, his face hidden in the shadows. Then he pulled out a rope, looped it around the poor man's neck, and tightened it. His body thrashed violently before quickly going limp and collapsed onto the cold ground. No. I was frozen in place. As I instinctively stepped back, my foot accidentally kicked a glass bottle. The killer whipped around, his hollow, emotionless eyes locking onto mine. I turned and ran, my heart pounding violently in my chest. Footsteps thundered behind me, drawing closer. With trembling hands, I pulled out my phone, my fingers shaking as I dialed 911. There's a murderer. He's chasing me. I glanced back. He was gaining on me. Panicked, my heel caught on the uneven pavement, sending me tumbling forward. My phone flew from my grasp, skidding across the ground before cracking. I panted, my knee throbbing in pain, but I couldn't stop. With no other choice, I pushed myself up and limped forward, hoping the police could trace my call. I made a sharp turn into another alley, only to realize too late that I had run into a dead end. Trapped, I turned to face the killer. A smirk played at the corner of his lips.
Go on, run. Do you really think you can escape?
Stay back. I already called the police. I stepped backward, my hands fumbling behind me until they landed on a rusted metal rod. He lunged at me. I swung the rod, but he dodged effortlessly. With a swift move, he grabbed the rod, tossed it aside, and shoved me against the damp wall. I felt his cold hands wrap around my throat, tightening slowly, cutting off my air. I clawed at his arms, kicked frantically, my mind growing hazy. I couldn't die here.
Stop struggling. You're going to die.
Using the last of my strength, I lifted my knee and slammed it into his groin. He howled in pain and collapsed, his grip loosening. I hurriedly ran away. But after just a few steps, he had already lunged forward, grabbed my ankle, and sent me crashing to the ground.
You bitch, I'll kill you!
He staggered to his feet, raising the knife, his eyes bloodshot, his breath ragged like a wild beast. I couldn't die like this. I forced myself up and stumbled forward. Suddenly, a sharp, searing pain tore through my back. I froze, my body swaying. He wrenched the knife from my flesh, and the agony sent me crashing to my knees.
It's time to end this.
Please, don't kill me. I didn't see anything.
Too late. Anyone who sees me dies.
Just as I was about to surrender to the darkness, hurried footsteps echoed in the alley, growing closer. The killer stiffened, his knife poised mid-air, eyes darting toward the alley entrance. A few police officers, guns at the ready, were running toward me.
Drop your weapon.
The killer sprang to his feet, a manic glint in his eyes, and charged at the officers, knife in hand. A bullet pierced straight through his chest, the gunshot echoing loudly, shattering the silence. His body jerked, stumbling back before collapsing onto the cold pavement. Before I lost consciousness completely, I felt myself being lifted and rushed out of the alley. I woke up in a hospital bed. My throat dry and burning, each breath labored. A sharp pain radiated from my back, piercing through every fiber of my body when I tried to move. Sometime later, a police officer arrived to take my statement. He told me the killer had died that night. He had been hired to assassinate the middle-aged man due to a business dispute. In the following weeks, I returned to work. My wounds had healed, but the memories of that night still haunted me. Every time I passed that alley, I could still feel the chilling grip of fear wrapping around me.
I had a horrifying experience at a friend's birthday party.
Give it back. Please return it to me.
This story has remained a haunting memory for me to this day. That day, I was invited by Lily to attend her birthday party at her house. I prepared a small gift for her and happily went to the party. However, as soon as I entered, I felt that there was something strangely gloomy about the atmosphere. The air was somber, lacking the lively music of a typical birthday celebration. Lily chatted with me for a while before heading inside. She needed to put away the gift. At that moment, a limping man approached me and struck up a conversation.
Hello, you're Lily's friend, right?
Yes, and you are?
I'm Lucas, Lily's older brother.
Really? I've never heard Lily mention you before. Just then, someone bumped into me forcefully, causing me to stumble and fall toward Lucas. As I touched him, I was startled. His body was ice cold, completely devoid of warmth.
Are you okay?
No, I'm fine. I reached for the glass to hide my embarrassment, but clumsily dropped it. The water splashed onto Lucas's feet nearby. I'm so sorry. Before I could finish my sentence, I froze in shock. Lucas was gone. But what terrified me even more was the dried bloodstain left where he had just stood. At that moment, whispers filled the air, sending chills down my spine.
What's wrong with her?
I don't know. She's been talking to herself this whole time.
I stared at them in shock, unable to process what had just happened.
Ariel, are you okay?
I was just talking to your brother, but I don't know where he went.
You said you met Lucas?
Yes. He's tall, with a mole at the corner of his eye. Is he your brother?
That's impossible! My brother, Lucas, passed away 2 months ago?
I stood frozen. Then, who had I just met? I didn't dare think further. I quickly said goodbye to Lily and rushed home. From that night on, I had nightmares every time I closed my eyes.
Please return
I
it to me.
dreamed of Lucas strangling me, but I didn't know why. That made me skip school and rely on sedatives for a week. Lily, noticing my absence from class, came to check on me.
Are you okay? You've been missing from school?
I've just been feeling a bit unwell.
Oh? Why is this pen here? I've been looking for it everywhere.
I borrowed it from you a while ago, but forgot to tell you. I also never got the chance to return it.
This was my brother's favorite pen. Ever since he passed away, I've been keeping it as a memento.
A chill ran down my spine upon hearing that. Could this be the reason for everything that had happened to me? From the moment I returned the pen, my nightmares stopped. But the memories of that night remained etched in my mind forever.
I was an online seller and had just moved into a new house to support my business. Luckily, I found a rather spacious house in a small neighborhood, and the rent was incredibly reasonable. During the first few nights living there, I was often awakened by the sound of scissors echoing from the next room. I thought to myself, could it be a thief? Summoning all my courage, I went out to check. But as soon as I opened the door, the sound disappeared, and the door to the other room remained tightly shut. Everything seemed normal, as if nothing had happened, so I tiredly returned to my bedroom. A while later, I was woken up again by the same sound, but this time it was louder and more urgent. A growing sense of unease crept over me, and my heart pounded in my chest. I got out of bed and went to the next room, but just like before, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. As I was about to close the door, I suddenly noticed a woman standing in the middle of the room. Her head bowed. She was holding a pair of rusty scissors, the blades dripping with a thick, dark liquid onto the floor. I stood frozen in the doorway, my legs glued to the ground, unable to move. Who are you? Why are you in my house? The woman didn't answer. Instead, she slowly lifted her face and it was no longer intact. Her mouth had been slit open all the way to her ears and deep scratches covered her face, oozing fresh blood. Terrified, I let out a scream, only to realize I was lying in bed with sunlight streaming in through the window. Was it just a dream? But the fear felt so real and cold sweat drenched my body. Unable to shake off my unease, I decided to call the landlord to ask about the woman. However, he dismissed my concerns, saying he knew nothing, before hurriedly hanging up. I had a gut feeling that he was hiding something about the history of the house. That night, the events repeated themselves, but this time, the sound seemed to be right next to my ear. Frightened, I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the chilling noise. Moments later, the sound suddenly stopped, and I thought that perhaps it was finally over. But when I opened my eyes, I was horrified to see the woman floating above me on the ceiling, laughing eerily. Her face drew closer and closer, her icy breath sending shivers down my spine. Overcome with terror, I screamed, mustering all my strength to leap out of bed and dash out of the house. Her sinister laughter echoed behind me, following every step I took. That night, I booked a nearby hotel to stay in, desperate to get away from that cursed house. The next morning, as I returned, I ran into a neighbor who had just come back from somewhere. Hello, ma'am. I just moved into the house across the street.
You live in that house?
Yes, but I'm planning to move out today. Is there something wrong?
A long time ago, a woman was brutally murdered by her husband in that house.
Why did her husband do that?
She was having an affair, and when her husband found out, he slit her face and then killed her before turning himself into the police.
I saw her last night. Her face was horrifying.
Ever since she died, she's been haunting that house, scaring off women with beautiful faces like yours.
A chill ran down my spine, sending a wave of goosebumps over my skin.
People often dreamed about magic lamps and 3 wishes. But what if those wishes turned into curses? I was Kevin, an office worker living alone in a small house in the suburbs. That day, on my way home from work, I passed by a roadside dump and was drawn to something glittering in a pile of old junk. It was a porcelain teapot with chipped glaze and faded patterns. But something about it felt like it came from a fairy tale. A faint light seemed to flicker from it, strangely pulling me in. I picked it up, brushed off the dust, and decided to take it home as a decoration for my bedroom. That night, I dreamed of a soft whisper in my ear.
Rub me. 3 wishes will come true.
I jolted awake. The room was still pitch dark. The teapot sat quietly on the shelf. I turned on the light and stared at it, a curious feeling welling up inside me. I picked up the teapot, thinking of the old tales I had read, and rubbed it. Nothing happened. I laughed at myself, feeling silly, and went back to sleep. The next morning, just as I stepped out the gate, the neighbor's dog rushed out, barking furiously.
Why don't you just drop dead?
When I came home that evening, I froze. The dog was lying stiff and lifeless right in front of the house across the street. A strange, indescribable feeling crept over me. Later that night, after a shower, I turned on the TV and began watching the news. They were reporting a terrorist group holding 20 hostages in a shopping mall.
Why not just kill them already? Why bother taking hostages?
And minutes later, the next news update came in. All 20 hostages have been killed for unknown reasons. I shivered, frozen in front of the TV. Could this really be a coincidence? I tried to recall everything and suddenly remembered the teapot and the strange dream from the night before. At that moment, I panicked as I remembered the phone call with my mother at noon. In a fit of anger, I had shouted, "Did you live just to make my life miserable?" I grabbed my phone and called her over and over, but no one answered. In despair, I ran to find the teapot, determined to destroy it. I tore the room apart, but it was gone. The teapot had vanished without a trace. Suddenly, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was a message from my aunt. "Your mom is gone." On her stomach was carved, "Third wish."
Have you ever left a bad review for an order? I never thought that a bad online review could drag me into hell. Hello, my name is Emily, 25 years old, a horror fiction writer for a renowned publishing company. I had written countless terrifying stories, but I never imagined that one day I would become the character in a real-life horror tale. It all started last month when I ordered dinner from a small, newly opened restaurant near my apartment building. Starving, I eagerly opened the food container, but the moment I did, a foul, nauseating smell hit me, making me rush to the bathroom to vomit. Even more horrifying, inside the container was something that looked like a decomposing human finger. Terrified, I immediately threw the food into the trash and left a 1-star review for the restaurant. I had no idea that this was just the beginning of a nightmare. Shortly after, I received a message from the restaurant owner. I can refund your money, Kyle, but it will cost you your life in exchange. I shivered at the words on my screen. Was this some sick joke or a real threat? My building had no security, so if the restaurant owner really wanted revenge, he could come straight to my apartment. After thinking carefully, I decided to stay overnight in the room of Helen, my colleague who lived upstairs, to avoid trouble. I had a camera installed outside my door so I could monitor my apartment through my phone. Looking at the screen, I saw a tall man wearing black sportswear and a baseball cap standing in front of my door. I wanted to tell Helen, but she was too focused on texting someone, seemingly unaware of my distress. Suddenly, the man looked directly at the camera, mumbling something under his breath. A large, deep scar ran down his cheek, making him look terrifying. He licked his lips, smirked with satisfaction, and then made a throat-slitting gesture before turning away. I trembled as I stared at my phone screen. What was he planning? I turned to Helen and realized she had been staring at me the whole time. Her gaze gave me an eerie feeling, as if something sinister was about to happen. I forced a smile and asked, "Helen, is something wrong? Why are you looking at me like that?" Helen smiled slightly and said,
"Oh, it's nothing."
I nervously reached for my glass of water but accidentally spilled it on a notebook on the table. Hurriedly, I picked up the notebook to dry it, but a photo slipped out and fell to the floor. When I bent down to pick it up, my heart nearly stopped. In the picture was Helen smiling brightly next to the very same man who had stood outside my door. A horrifying realization struck me. Helen was the one who had recommended this restaurant to me. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. Helen glanced at me before standing up to answer it. Sensing that something was wrong, I quickly opened Facebook and secretly started a live stream before hiding my phone. Helen soon returned, followed by the man from earlier. I placed my phone on the table and looked at them in fear. "Helen, who is this?" Helen smiled slightly and said,
"This is my boyfriend, the owner of the restaurant you rated 1 star.
I stammered. "What do you mean? Did you plan all of this?" Helen burst into laughter and said,
"That's right. I hate your fake perfection. You took everything that should have been mine."
Then she suddenly slapped me hard across the face. A burning pain spread across my cheek, making my head spin. Helen pointed at me in anger and shouted,
"I was supposed to be the best writer. How dare a newcomer like you surpass me?"
Before I could react, Helen grabbed my collar and repeatedly struck me in the face. Each blow landed heavily, making my head spin as my vision gradually blurred from the throbbing pain. I struggled to stand and asked, "If you hate me so much, why did you let me stay here?" Helen laughed hysterically and said,
"Because I wanted to see you suffer, to watch you beg for mercy right in front of me."
Enraged, I shouted, "Keep dreaming! You're just a failure! Don't blame others for your incompetence!" The restaurant owner suddenly lunged forward and punched me hard in the stomach, sending me crashing onto the floor. Before I could recover, he pulled out a knife and slashed a deep cut across my shoulder. I screamed in pain, clutching my wound as warm blood soaked through my thin shirt. Helen stood over me laughing.
"Emily, beg me, and I'll let you die painlessly."
Through gritted teeth, I spat back, "I will never beg a loser like you." Furious, Helen snatched the knife from her boyfriend's hand and lunged at me. Just as I thought it was the end for me, a loud, urgent knocking sounded at the door. Helen froze, turning her face toward the door, silently observing the commotion outside. Sensing my chance, I immediately sprang up, kicked Helen away, and sprinted toward the door. Standing outside was Lucy, my close colleague from work, her face filled with panic. Lucy quickly caught me and asked worriedly,
"Emily, are you okay?"
I gasped, "Help me! Helen wants to kill me!" Before I could explain further, Helen shouted angrily,
"Don't think you can escape from here."
She gripped the knife tightly and charged at us, her bloodshot eyes filled with madness. Lucy and I froze in fear as Helen's twisted expression made her look like a completely different person. Suddenly, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed behind us. Police officers had arrived. It turned out that when Lucy saw my live stream, she immediately called the police and rushed to my place. Helen and the restaurant owner were swiftly restrained and taken away before they could fight back. I let out a sigh of relief, but as the adrenaline faded, pain overwhelmed my body. Exhausted, I lost consciousness and sank into darkness. When I woke up, I found myself in the hospital, my wounds carefully bandaged. This nightmare was finally over, but the scars it left behind would haunt me forever.
Did you believe that a photograph could imprison someone? Anna always did. At that time, Anna's family had just moved into a house standing alone in the outskirts of Maine. The house wasn't big, but it was fully equipped for the three of them. While cleaning, Anna found an old family photograph, possibly left behind by the previous owners. But the strange thing was that all the faces in the photo were completely blurred. However, Anna didn't pay much attention to it. She had plenty of other things to do. As she tossed the photo to the floor, her 6-year-old son, Daniel, ran over and picked it up. He looked at the picture and whispered something to it happily.
The boy in the photo looks just like me, Mommy.
Don't say silly things, sweetheart.
She thought her son was just joking, so she didn't take it seriously. In the days that followed, Daniel always carried the photo with him and talked to it alone.
Daniel, who are you talking to?
They said they want to take me out to play.
Who are they?
Right here, Mommy.
Whenever Anna tried to take the photo away, Daniel would scream and demand it back. Only when she returned the photo did he stop crying. Seeing her son's behavior, Anna couldn't help but worry. One night, Anna woke up with a start because of the thunder outside. Rain poured down violently as if a storm had just swept through.
Did you hear that?
Hear what?
I think someone's calling me.
Mommy, help me!
Anna and her husband rushed to their son's room. The moment they reached the doorway, both froze in horror. A shadowy figure was lifting Daniel off the ground by his neck. Her husband lunged forward to pull the figure away, but froze when his hands couldn't touch it. Even more terrifying, the figure had no face. Beneath the hood was only a pitch-black void. Suddenly, it reached out another hand and gripped her husband's throat tightly. Anna stood there in shock, unable to scream as her voice caught in her throat. She watched in horror as both her husband and son were swallowed by darkness. But in the end, it turned out everything had been a figment of Anna's imagination. A year ago, Anna had been admitted to a hospital in a state of panic. She kept insisting that the cursed photograph had imprisoned her husband and son. However, they had both died in an accident. The photo Anna referred to was just an old family picture. When he was alive, her son had loved it and always carried it with him. Unable to accept the truth, Anna created a false memory. She believed her husband and son were still alive, waiting for her to rescue them.
I never forgot that summer, the most terrifying time of my life. After my parents got divorced, I moved in with Aunt Clara, a distant relative of my family. Her house was eerily quiet, with curtains always drawn shut, whether it was day or night. That night, while I was sleeping, I heard a piano melody echoing through the silence. The haunting, sorrowful notes sounded like a choked sob in the night. When I went out to check, the sound abruptly stopped. The next morning, I asked Aunt Clara about it, but she said I had only been dreaming. But through Aunt Clara's evasive gaze, I knew she was lying. I felt that someone was inside, and I wanted to know who it was. That night, I didn't sleep, my eyes fixed on the door of my room. At exactly midnight, the piano music started again, louder than ever. I left my room and slowly approached the door across the hallway. As I drew near, the door creaked open. Bit by bit, I felt as if an invisible force was guiding my legs, pulling me into the room. It was a dark bedroom, dimly lit by the pale moonlight spilling through the window. Beside the bed stood an old, dusty piano. The most terrifying part was that the keys were moving on their own, though no one was sitting there. Suddenly, I saw a girl in a worn white dress standing near the window. Her long hair covered her face, revealing only a twisted, pale smile.
Come play with me.
In an instant, my whole body was yanked toward the piano. As my fingers touched the keys, fragmented memories flooded my mind. A girl in a white dress, sitting at the piano on a grand stage. She played with all her passion, her hands gliding gently over the keys. Suddenly, the ceiling light crashed down right where she sat. I screamed in fear, but no sound came out of my throat.
Jack, why did you come in here?
That was when I snapped back to reality. Aunt Clara stood beside me, her face pale with fear. Afterward, I tried to calm down and told her everything. Upon hearing it, Aunt Clara broke into sobs. It turned out that the room across from mine had belonged to Emily, her daughter. Emily had loved playing the piano, but an accident that year left her unable to play ever again. Unable to accept the truth, Emily took her own life in that very room. Since that night, Aunt Clara locked the room tightly and never let me enter it again. But every night, the sound of the piano still echoed, achingly beautiful and filled with sorrow.
I once dropped something in the hospital restroom, and it was returned to me. But that became the reason I never dared to be alone in a hospital again. About 2 years ago, I was hospitalized due to migraines. That night, I woke up suddenly with the urge to use the bathroom. I got out of bed and walked straight to the restroom at the end of the hallway. While sitting there, I pulled out my phone and played with it for a while. Suddenly, I heard slow, dragging footsteps, like someone was slowly approaching. I looked down through the gap beneath the door. I saw a pair of wrinkled, skinny feet, probably belonging to an elderly person, maybe in their 60s or 70s. At first, I didn't think much of it, assuming it was another patient like me. Then I heard the sound of water dripping onto the floor. Curious, I looked down again. The feet were still standing still, but blood was dripping down, forming a dark red puddle. A sense of dread crept up inside me. I quickly pushed the door open and stepped out, but I froze. There was no one outside, only a pool of blood where the person had been standing. The restroom light began flickering, flashing on and off. Terrified, I ran straight back to my room without daring to look back. Around 2 a.m., just as I was drifting off, I heard those dragging footsteps again, like someone slowly approaching. This time, I dared to crack my eyes open, my heart pounding in my chest. An old man, around 60 or 70, was slowly walking toward me.
Young man, you left this in the restroom. Take it.
I followed his hand with my eyes. God, it was my phone! Before I could even thank him, he had already turned to leave. I thought to myself how lucky I was that he had picked it up for me. The next morning, I searched all around the hospital to thank that old man, but couldn't find him. Finally, I asked the nurse when she came in to check on me. Excuse me, have you seen an elderly man, around 60 or 70, around here?
There's only the old man in the room next to yours. But he passed away last night.
Hearing that, I was stunned into silence. I didn't say another word to anyone. When I opened my phone, I discovered a strange photo taken during the night. It was a picture of me sleeping, with the old man standing beside my bed. He was staring straight at me with a grin that stretched from ear to ear. Right after that, I called my mom to pick me up immediately. I never wanted to stay in that terrifying place for even another minute.
I was sure I had buried it very deep in a faraway place. But when I came home, it was sitting right on my bed. My name is Irene, 25 years old, and I worked in the field of interior design. During a trip, I happened to stop by a second-hand shop tucked away behind a tree-lined road. While I was engrossed in observing the old clocks, my eyes suddenly stopped at a beautiful doll placed in the corner of a shelf. It wore an old pure white dress, and its curly blonde hair was neatly combed. What stood out was its pair of deep, bright blue eyes that were eerily striking, making it impossible for me to look away. Because I found the doll so captivating, I decided to buy it and bring it home. I placed it on the shelf in my bedroom, thinking it would make a perfect decoration. That night, I was awakened by a strange sound. A very faint giggle echoed somewhere in the room. I sat up and looked around, but there was nothing. But as soon as I lay back down, a whisper soft as the wind brushed past my ear.
We will play together forever.
I sprang up immediately, my heart pounding. The room was still pitch dark and silent. The next day, when I returned home after work, I froze. The doll was no longer on the shelf. It was lying in the middle of my bed. I checked around, but nothing was stolen, and there were no signs of a break-in. I sighed in relief, placed the doll back on the shelf, thinking maybe I had brought it to bed myself and forgotten. But from that day on, every morning when I woke up, I found it in a different place. On the windowsill, at the foot of the bed. But from that day on, every morning when I woke up, I found it in a different place. On the windowsill, at the foot of the bed. I began to lose sleep, feeling as if invisible eyes were watching me in the dark. Finally, I decided to put the doll in the closet and lock it tightly. But just as I turned off the light to sleep, a dry click sounded. I froze. In the darkness, I heard small footsteps slowly approaching the bed. Trembling, I reached out and turned on the light. The doll was sitting on the pillow right next to me. I screamed, threw it to the ground, and ran out of the room. The next morning, I decided to bury the doll in a deserted field, more than 30 kilometers from the city. I stood silently looking at the freshly filled hole beneath my feet, silently hoping everything would end there. But as I turned to walk away, I seemed to hear a faint giggle rising from underground. Terrified, I ran to my car and quickly drove off, not daring to look back. That night, I returned home in a state of exhaustion. When I opened the door to my room, my blood seemed to freeze. The doll was sitting on my bed, its hair in a mess, its dress covered in dirt, and its bright blue eyes glowing with a ghostly gleam.
You thought you could abandon me?
I recently moved into an old apartment building in Vienna. Though the infrastructure is a bit run down, I didn't mind too much. It's quiet here, which matters to me. I'm a writer, My work is sensitive to noise. It easily breaks my thought flow. The apartment next to mine belongs to Elisa, a very friendly single mother. Her son, Lucas, is around 8 years old, well-mannered and polite. At the end of the hallway lives Conrad Weiss, a man in his late 20s, tall and thin, with hair that always covers his face. No one knows what he does for a living. He keeps to himself, rarely speaks to anyone. We only ever spoke once a few days ago. It was the night of a blood moon. I went out onto the communal balcony to get a good view and snap some photos. As I raised my phone to capture the moon, I noticed Conrad had appeared in the corner of my frame, startling me a bit. It was the first time I'd seen him outside. So he likes blood moons too. He looked unwound, leaning against the railing, holding a glass filled with a deep red liquid that shimmered under the moonlight. A cold metallic scent drifted past me on the breeze that chilled down my spine. Not wanting to be awkward, I walked over and joked, "Red wine under the moonlight? You're more sophisticated than I expected."
It's not wine, but yes, the moon pairs nicely with it.
I had no idea what he meant. I just forced a chuckle and went back inside without another word. A few weeks after I moved in, the city was shaken by a string of strange deaths. Cats and dogs were found in dark alleys, completely drained of blood, their bodies shriveled. Then it was people. 3 victims in 1 week, all found inside their own homes. No signs of forced entry. The media called it the Vienna Bite. Theories range from a deranged killer to cult rituals. I felt a creeping fear. That night, I made sure my door was securely locked before heading to bed. But around midnight, I heard it. The faint, slow sound of someone turning my doorknob. The metal handle twisted ever so slightly, then stopped. I couldn't sleep at all after that. The next morning, I told Elisa what happened. She didn't believe me. She just gave me a nervous laugh and said I was letting the news get to me, imagining things. I wasn't so sure. My instincts told me otherwise. And that very day, Lucas went missing. Eliza had stepped out without locking the door, leaving Lucas at home alone. When she returned, he was gone. She called the police immediately.
It's my fault. I should have watched him more carefully. Do you think he was taken and drained like the others?
Drained? Something stirred in my gut. When the police arrived, I told them to check Conrad's apartment. They broke down the door, and what we saw was a glimpse of hell. Dozens of blood bags, jars of organs floating in strange fluids, a notebook filled with detailed entries on each victim, and in the center of the room, a bed. Lucas was there, unconscious but alive. His mouth was taped shut, his wrists and ankles bound. Thank God he was still breathing. In the inner room, they found Conrad. He was asleep, standing upright in a coffin, arms folded across his chest. Conrad was arrested. He showed no remorse. He was diagnosed with paranoid delusions. He claimed to be a vampire, said he needed to consume blood to prevent his body from decaying. He had killed others before moving to our area. Eventually, he was sentenced to life in prison. It's a fitting end. After that, Lucas suffered serious psychological trauma. Elisa decided to move away to get better care for him. He stopped talking to me the way he used to. His eyes seemed deep, hollow. I stayed behind, still living here, and still writing. But now and then, around 3 a.m., I swear I hear the slow, deliberate turn of a doorknob.
I could never forget the tense moment when I had to struggle with a murderer, and the truth about the person behind it all broke my heart. That afternoon, When I came home, I immediately sensed something was wrong as I looked toward the bedroom. I had a habit of opening the bedroom curtains right after waking up, but now they were drawn shut. Feeling uneasy, I slowly walked into the room to check. The moment I stepped inside, a man suddenly appeared from behind the door. He lunged at me, swinging a hammer at my head, causing me to lose balance and fall to the floor. "Who are you? What do you want?" The stranger said nothing and continued attacking me. I tried to calm myself and remembered the self-defense lessons I had learned in a training program. I screamed loudly for help to distract him while scratching and clawing at him. Then I gathered all my strength and shoved him hard, slamming him into the wall. Without wasting a second, I ran outside, shouting for help from the neighbors. But just as I reached the living room, he suddenly grabbed me and pulled me back, throwing me to the floor. Although the man was tall and large, I outweighed him significantly. Taking advantage of this, I quickly stood up and pushed him forcefully once more. This time, he sprawled on the floor. I immediately climbed on top of him and tightened my hands around his neck. "Who sent you here?" But he didn't answer. He only growled and groaned like a wild animal. Enraged, I pressed my fingers harder against his neck until he stopped moving completely. Once I confirmed that the attacker was dead, I rushed out of the house to seek help. With the help of the neighbors, I was finally able to call 911. The police inspected the scene and found no signs of forced entry. However, besides me, only my son, Michael, knew the door code. Later, the police found a crumpled piece of paper in Edward's pocket with my home address written on it. I was truly terrified when I realized it was Michael's handwriting. Following this clue, the police quickly arrested Michael for questioning. Michael had hired Edward, a friend from his gang, to kill me in order to claim the inheritance. Michael and I often fought because he was addicted to drugs and had abandoned his studies. As a result, I had stopped giving him money for the past 2 months, which drove him to commit the crime. I never imagined that one day my own son would want to kill his biological mother. Michael was later sentenced to 10 years in prison for his crimes. Meanwhile, my actions toward Edward were ruled as self-defense, and I was not charged with murder. After the incident, I used my story to inspire others.
After 5 years as a delivery worker, I never thought a single order could cost me my life. That night, close to midnight, I received an order for 2 servings of chicken rice. The delivery address was a house on the outskirts of the city. Even though I had a bad feeling about it, I had not received a single order all day, so I gritted my teeth and accepted it. When I arrived, I saw an old, desolate house standing alone in the middle of the woods. A cold gust of wind blew against me, sending shivers down my spine. I knocked on the door, but no one answered, so I took out my phone and called the customer.
"The door is unlocked. Bring it inside."
I hesitated, but pushed the door open. The musty smell immediately filled my nose, making me grimace. The air inside was cold, as if no one had lived there for a long time.
"I have your delivery. Is anyone here?"
At that moment, the sound of a knife chopping down on wood, thick, heavy, and sharp, resounded from a room inside. I jumped, my heart pounding. Carefully, I tiptoed toward the door, and the scene before me made my stomach churn. A man was chopping a human arm. On the table, severed body parts were laid out in pieces. I screamed in terror. The thick, metallic scent of blood choked my throat, and I collapsed onto the floor.
You harmed someone. I have to call the police. Stay and help me. or I'll put you on this table next.
My entire body froze at his words. Fear forced me to turn back and help him pack the body parts into black bags. Each time my hands touched the cold, lifeless flesh, it felt as if thousands of insects were crawling over my skin. After we finished cleaning up, he ordered me to dispose of the black bags. Trembling, I carried them to a deserted riverside, tossing each one into the water before hurrying away. But as soon as I turned around, the man was already behind me, gripping a knife tightly, his cold eyes staring into mine.
You did well, but you still have to die. I did everything you asked. Please let me go. Let you go? You've seen everything. You can't live. I promise I won't tell anyone. Just let me go. The only way to keep a secret is to take it to the grave.
With that, he lunged at me. I dodged just in time, the blade grazing my arm and burning my skin. Enraged, he raised the knife again, his grip tightening as he thrust forward. On reflex, I grabbed his wrist, stopping the blade just inches from my face. His strength was terrifying. I used all my force to shove him back, making him stumble. Seizing the moment, I grabbed a rock from the ground and hurled it at his head. He cried out in pain, clutching his head as he staggered. I sprinted to my car, speeding away as I called the police. But by the time they arrived, the man had disappeared without a trace. A few days later, I returned home only to be greeted by a horrifying sight. A bloodied human arm lay in the middle of my floor. On the wall, a message was scrawled in dark red blood. You will have to disappear.
Did you really think you could escape me?
I spun around, locking eyes with the man. He aimed a gun at my head.
Please, I'll give you anything you want. I want your life.
In that instant, I grabbed his wrist, struggling to wrestle the gun upward. A gunshot rang out. The bullet struck the ceiling, sending dust falling around us. I jolted, loosening my grip, and he kicked my stomach hard, sending me crashing to the floor. I tried to push myself up, but before I could, his heavy foot slammed down onto my chest, pinning me against the cold tiles.
Don't waste your strength. You won't escape.
At that moment, my hand brushed against my phone in my pocket. Without hesitation, I yanked it out and hurled it at his face. With every ounce of strength left in me, I scrambled up, shoving him aside as I dashed toward the door. But before I could get far, a gunshot rang out. A searing pain shot through my leg, and I collapsed onto the floor.
You little rat. Let's see where you'll run now.
I refused to give up. Gritting my teeth, I crawled forward. Another shot rang out, piercing my other leg. I screamed in agony as my body convulsed and the world blurred.
Say goodbye to the world.
Suddenly, the door burst open with a loud bang. The man froze, eyes widening in shock. Before he could react, a bullet shot straight into his chest. Dark red blood slowly spread across his shirt. Police officers swarmed in, surrounding the house. I exhaled shakily, my body going limp as I shut my eyes in relief. It was finally over. I was rushed to the hospital, my legs soaked in blood. Though the killer was dead, the memory of that night haunted me every second of my life. The images replayed in my mind like a never-ending horror film with no escape.
I used to love living alone because of the freedom and comfort it provided. But after the incident a month ago, that thought has turned into a deep fear in my heart. Hello, I'm Hannah, a 25-year-old office worker. The story I'm about to tell is a terrifying memory that still haunts me. I used to walk to work because I lived nearby, but later, every time I returned home, I felt like someone was following me. One time, I caught a glimpse of a shadow behind me, but when I turned around, there was only a dark, empty alley. One day, while I was working in the living room, my phone rang, displaying an unknown number. Hello, who is it?
Hannah, you look beautiful in that nightgown tonight.
Who are you? What do you want?
You'll find out soon enough.
A chill ran down my spine, but I bit my lip, trying to shake off the fear and focus on my work. Moments later, a sudden knock at the door made me jump. My eyes darted toward it, an indescribable unease creeping over me. Who is it? It's already this late. I went to the door and looked through the peephole, but I didn't saw anyone, just a long, empty hallway. Unease settled over me, and I sank into my chair, unable to concentrate on work anymore. Suddenly, I heard the sound of a key turning outside. Someone was trying to break in. My heart pounded, and before I could react, the door swung open. A man stepped in, his cold gaze locking onto me. A large scar marked his eyebrow. It looked familiar, but panic clouded my thoughts. Who are you? The man didn't answer. He just walked slowly toward me, pulling a small knife from his pocket.
Don't come here, I'll call the police.
He ignored me and kept advancing. Out of fear, I grabbed a vase from the table and hurled it at him. The man slightly tilted his head and raised his hand to shield his face. Seizing the opportunity, I quickly grabbed the phone from the table and dashed straight into the bedroom. My hands trembled as I tried to dial the police. Outside, his heavy footsteps stopped in front of my door. I suddenly realized that the police couldn't arrive quickly enough, so I had to find a way to save myself first. I hurriedly rushed to open the window. It was late at night with no one on the street, only the dim streetlights flickering in the dark. The lock trembled slightly, then the sound of metal clinking echoed through the tense atmosphere. There was no time to hesitate. I dropped to my knees and crawled under the bed. Right after that, the sound of the door opening echoed as the man's footsteps entered, each step slow but steady. I held my breath, lying still and waiting, hoping he wouldn't notice. As the man moved toward the window, I seized the opportunity and bolted for the door. I dashed toward the main door, but before I could reach it, he grabbed my hand and yanked me back. My whole body was thrown hard onto the floor. A sharp pain shot through me. I groaned softly, trying to prop myself up with my hands, trembling as I crawled backward.
Don't waste your energy. You won't escape.
I suddenly recognized the familiar voice. He was the pervert who had just been fired from my company. I never expected he would target me this time. Luke the pervert, stay away from me.
Hana, you make it impossible for me to look away.
I shuddered, trying to jerk backward to escape him, but his rough fingers tightened around my chin, keeping me from moving. I trembled and shouted at him.
Let me go.
Don't rush, Hana. We still have plenty of time.
My gaze suddenly stopped on the shards of the vase scattered on the floor. I quickly reached out, trying to touch the nearest shard.
I tightened the shard in my hand, took a deep breath, and suddenly swung it up to stab his neck.
He clutched his neck in pain, loosening his grip on me in an instant. Without hesitation, I staggered to my feet and ran towards the door. Just then, the police burst in. I scrambled behind them, panting, my terrified gaze locked on Luke. I stood there, my breath still rapid, my heart still beating irregularly. My legs felt like jelly after everything that had just happened. Finally, everything is over. After that incident, I moved to another area to live with a friend, no longer daring to stay alone. I hope that after this story, you will be more cautious, especially the girls who are living alone.
Have you ever imagined your life being taken over by someone else? That night, Nancy was lying in the living room, curled up in a thin blanket. Suddenly, her husband John called to say he had to work overtime and wouldn't be home that night. Nancy sighed, got up, locked the front door and the windows tightly, then went up to the bedroom. Around 11 o'clock, she was startled awake by a noise downstairs. There were soft footsteps, mixed with the faint clinking of knives and forks. Nancy rushed down, but the scene before her left her frozen. A woman wearing a plain white mask, holding a knife, was walking around the kitchen. At that moment, the woman looked up, her cold eyes staring directly at Nancy. Terrified, Nancy turned and ran back to the bedroom, locking the door behind her. Outside, the pounding on the door echoed relentlessly. She trembled as she pulled out her phone, dialed 911, and curled up in a corner, waiting for the police. A few minutes later, sirens wailed at the gate and flashing lights pierced through the curtains. The banging suddenly stopped, followed by hurried footsteps fading away. When the police entered the house, the masked woman had already escaped through the back door. They searched the area but found no clues, so they eventually left. A few days later, while Nancy and John were having breakfast, the police suddenly stormed into the house. Nancy and John were handcuffed and dragged away in panic, not understanding what was happening. It turned out the two people who had been arrested were actually Alex and June, wanted criminals. They had been watching Nancy and her husband for quite some time. Then, they visited a shop that specialized in making masks to look like other people. The criminals had asked the shop owner to create 2 masks resembling Nancy and John. Once they had their new faces, they planned to kill and impersonate Nancy and John. That night, right after Nancy called 911, she received a message from John. In the message was a photo of John lying motionless in the bathroom, with a red mark around his neck. Horrified, Nancy tried calling her husband, but the ringing came from inside her wardrobe. She opened it with trembling hands and found Alex, his face covered in blood, holding John's phone. Before she could react, the bedroom door burst open and June rushed in, a gleaming knife in her hand. "It's you. You murdered my husband?"
"Yes, you'll be seeing him very soon."
With that, she plunged the knife into Nancy's chest, causing her to collapse lifelessly on the floor. They buried Nancy and John's bodies in the backyard. But they didn't know the night they did it. A camera from the neighbor's house recorded everything. However, the neighbor had been away and only discovered the footage several days later, then called the police. Faced with the undeniable evidence, the two murderers had no choice but to confess to everything.
How long has it been since you last returned to your hometown? I recently went through a devastating return that left me scarred for the rest of my life. I am June, 27 years old. After a long time struggling to make a living in the city, I finally had the chance to visit my grandmother. As I approached her house, I saw a man in disheveled clothes hastily walking out from inside. I quickly approached and greeted him.
"Hello, sir. Did you come to visit my grandmother?"
The man hesitated and replied,
"Who are you?"
I smiled and responded,
"I'm Mrs. Smith's granddaughter. I came to visit her today. Is she home?"
The man stammered.
I don't know. I didn't see her inside."
Then he hurried away. I didn't think much of it and quickly entered the house, calling out, "Grandma, I'm home." There was no response. I walked to the door, continuing to call, "Grandma, where are you?" I pushed open the door and stepped inside. The house was dark, with only a faint light seeping through the window. Furniture was scattered everywhere as if someone had rummaged through them. I rushed into my grandmother's room, only to be hit by a pungent metallic smell that made me dizzy. In a panic, I turned on the light and froze in shock. Dried bloodstains covered the floor. Terrified, my voice trembled as I shouted, "Grandma! Grandma!" Suddenly, a dog's barking came from the backyard. It was Tom. My heart pounded as I ran outside. Tom barked even louder when he saw me, scratching the ground furiously as if trying to tell me something. The soil beneath Tom's paws looked freshly dug. A chill ran down my spine. I hurriedly dug into the ground, my heart racing. Soon, my hands touched a black plastic bag. My hands trembled as I opened it, revealing a pair of frail, lifeless hands. I screamed in despair and collapsed onto the ground, tears streaming down my face. At that moment, Tom growled and barked fiercely behind me, his eyes fixed on something. I turned around and saw the man from earlier standing right behind me, gripping a sickle tightly in his hand. Terrified, I asked, Did you kill my grandmother?" The man snarled.
You and your grandmother are such a nuisance. Let me send you to reunite with her.
Panicked, I screamed,
Is anyone there? Help me!
I tried to run, but he quickly grabbed me and pushed me to the ground. With a cold voice, he said,
There's no one around. Don't waste your breath.
He raised the sickle and lunged at me, but suddenly, Tom bit his ankle hard, making him scream in pain. Seizing the opportunity, I got up and ran. But before I could get far, Tom's agonizing yelp echoed. Then everything went silent. I froze, trembling, and turned back. Tom's head lay lifeless on the ground, severed from his body. The man, limping, approached me, his blood-stained sickle still in hand. Panicked, I stepped back and tripped over a rock, falling hard onto the ground. Despite his injury, he moved quickly, closing the distance between us. Desperate, I grabbed the rock I had tripped over and threw it at him. The rock struck his forehead. He screamed in pain and staggered backward. I got up and ran toward the front of the house, where I saw two young men returning from work. I shouted at them,
Help me, please!
They turned around, startled, and rushed toward me with worried expressions. Just then, the man chased after me, raising his sickle high, ready to strike. The two young men quickly grabbed a bamboo stick from the roadside and rushed toward the man. One of the young men grabbed a bamboo stick from the roadside and swung it at the attacker's hand, knocking the sickle away. The other struck his leg, making him collapse. The man screamed in agony as they quickly restrained him and tied him up with a rope. We immediately called the police, who took him into custody. I was devastated to learn that he had broken into my grandmother's house to steal and then brutally murdered her, dismembering her body and burying it in the backyard. Even now, I still blame myself. If only I had returned home sooner, perhaps things wouldn't have ended this way.
I almost lost my daughter when I entrusted her to someone who seemed to be a very good person. I am Ava, a single mother who had just moved to this small neighborhood with my 6-year-old daughter, Emily. My neighbor was a woman named Grace, an insurance saleswoman. She was very friendly and had a gentle smile. She often brought cakes and fruits to us as gifts. After some time living here, Grace and I became close. Seeing me struggle to juggle work and taking care of Emily, Grace offered to look after Emily for me. Grace shared that she had 2 children of her own, but they had both drowned when they were young. Being around Emily helped her cope with the grief of losing her children. For that reason, Grace advised me to buy insurance for Emily, just in case something happened. I didn't think much about it and agreed immediately because I trusted Grace so much. Everything was fine until a few months later. That afternoon, I came home earlier than usual, but I didn't find Emily or Grace anywhere. Grace had left a note saying that she had taken Emily on a picnic by the lake on the outskirts of town. I called Grace several times, but no one answered. A sudden feeling of unease surged within me, as if something was about to happen. I rushed to drive out of town to search for them. The area around there was very desolate, nothing like a place where people would go for fun, Suddenly, I heard the sound of a child crying in the distance. I had a bad feeling and rushed towards the sound. What I saw before me was horrifying. Grace was holding my daughter's head and pushing it under the water.
Emily, are you okay? What the hell are you doing?
I was just playing with her. It's nothing serious.
I'm calling the police. You're going to prison.
After saying that, I quickly took Emily to the hospital and called 911. Later, Grace was arrested while packing her things to escape. At her house, the police found an insurance policy for Emily. But the beneficiary wasn't me. It was Grace. According to the investigation, Grace had a serious gambling addiction and was deep in debt. Using her knowledge of insurance law, she had planned to kill Emily to claim the compensation money. Once she ran out of money, she had schemed to harm Emily when she saw us move in. I shuddered when I heard this. I had no idea I had entrusted Emily to a monster in human disguise. As for Emily, after she woke up, she frequently had nightmares and would wake up in terror. I had to take Emily for psychological treatment for a long time. Since that incident, I spent more time with Emily, never daring to let her interact with strangers again.